All right.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Graphic Arts Alliance webinar. We are really happy to be here with Utility Audit. Utility Audit's been a partner with Graphic Arts Alliance for a number of years now. And we're here with Jeremiah Vigil, and also we're here with Mike Vigil. They're both on the Utility Audit team, and they're going to take us through some insights into digital presses and some of the utility costs that you might want to be thinking about when you are installing and upgrading your to digital press. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jeremiah and let him take it away and give us a really good overview of what to be keeping an eye out when we're upgrading to digital. So Mike or Jeremiah, it's all you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. I know you all are busy. It's a Thursday afternoon. Thank you, GAA and Nika, for your time to and the affordability for us to do this. Uh, we're going to go over a pretty common sense overview on how to save on utilities with your print rooms, but I say common sense, but the more I audit utility bills and do these classes and these webinars for other organizations, I realize what's common to me is not necessarily common to, CFOs, COOs, and plant managers like yourself. So we're going to talk about the hidden utility cost of digital presses, powering and cooling the modern press room. A lot of the information that I'm going to share with you today is from real world experience and other clients that we've worked with nationwide, especially when it comes to press rooms like yourselves. We have six things that I want to go over with you today. And just here's the roadmap for today. We're going to talk about digital presses and what they actually draw from your utility bills, the climate control, which is, as we know, the real energy hog when it comes to power and for those rooms. The power cycle, as far as how, when, and why. And the why really is part four, which is talking about demand charges, or in electric speak, it's kW. And we have a couple real world examples to share. The fifth thing is I understand there's a lot of rates and curtailment and billing errors going on inside of your all's organization. Want to outline when and why curtailment would and wouldn't work and the risks involved with that. And then on the last thing is I always like to give people practical steps. So we're calling it part six, your Monday morning checklist. And in that, I have about five or six different things that you could take home with you, or not home, but things you could take to your work on Monday and implement them to help kind of alleviate some of the pressure on the utility bills that are taking place every month, wherever you guys are. So let's go right into part one. Let's talk about the digital presses, the printing presses, and really over the past 5 years, and I'd even say 10 years, a lot of in the technology world has changed. Not just with printing presses, but also in the manufacturing world. Equipment's being upgraded and new things are being put on the floors, but what's not changing is the utility setup. So your press has changed, but the utility setup hasn't changed. And there's four things on the slide right here. One is the offset press room. And what's really going on here? There's bigger motors, something there's drying aspects to it. There's the HVAC systems, the comfort, and the normal lighting that goes into all of those building. The digital being the high power density uh, that's all like compressed into one room. You have chillers, compressors, your HVAC, you got your press, your cutters, your dryers, your laminators. All these are concentrated into one small area or one large area, but when you put them all together, even though they're small loads and small pools on electricity individually, when you put them together, they're huge peaks that cause big problems for not just the room, but your utility bill at the end of the day. Digital presses require, as you know, humidity and temperature regulations, and that's just par for the course. And now we're going to look at how your HVAC system went from being something that was for environmental comfort for your staff and for people, and now it's become part of the production or part of the mechanics of your room as part of your production equipment. And then the bill that nobody reread. So most shops and presses, if you're like anyone else, or even like myself with my own home bill, we don't really focus on HVAC strategies or demand strategies and the areas where things need to change because equipment's changed. The strategy for utilities needs to change. So every one of these areas that I'm talking about places a leak in your utility bill. And that's really what today's about. So I hope you walk away with some really good practical steps. Let me just kind of give you an overview. I have four examples of printers and we pulled some data from manufacturer documentation online and also a source from Print Week, an article called Nailing Down the Kilowatts. As you can see on the far right, excuse me, on the far left side, we have a Xerox and a Ricoh. Those are toner machines. They're pulling 8 and 14 kilowatts just for their production press. And then on the right side, we have inkjet ones, which are a Xerox and a Canon. And you could see the Canon based off the type of machine, it's pulling almost, well more than double of what the Xerox is, or even the toner, like the Ricoh and the Nuvera. So technology matters. So when you're swapping technology, it's really important to look at the spec sheets and seeing how is this going to affect your meter at your utility level, and how it's going to affect your utility bill. And as we're moving on, it's never really just about the printing press. There's four culprits or four members of the supporting cast that's driving your utility bill higher. You got your chillers and your press rooms. Okay. So everything your press room and the dryers produce, they're all heat. They're all heat, and it's being pumped back into the room. And that's like almost a second energy bill that's being produced because of that. It's just combating the HVAC systems. And then there's the humidity control. And each one of these runs, this has to run when really nobody's there, because as you know, paper can serve as like a sponge. It'll just soak up the moisture. And if that relative humidity is above 40 or 60%, it's going to cause problems on your printers and the system's not going to work. So what a lot of people do is they think, well, I'm going to turn off the humidifiers or turn them down on Saturday and Sunday when no one's in the office, and then on Monday, turn them back on to full capacity just to save a little bit on the kWh or the usage of your electricity. But when you do that, really, all the savings goes away from that because on Monday it has to overload and work basically twice as hard and could take all day just to get that humidity back to where it needs to be. Another aspect or another cast member of our supporting high bills is the compressed air. And it's the classic silent load. So a leaky system's running, you're not hearing, there's a hole in the air duct somewhere. Those things cause such major overages in utility usages. And those are things that are just unseen because they're behind the walls or they're in the ceiling. And then the last one is the dryers, the corona, and the finishing. So, as a rule of thumb, when we do an audit and we're looking at utility bills, uh, one thing that really counts is the multiplier when you aggregate all four of these things together and you're trying to see how they can impact the utility bill. On the bottom, I have it in yellow. The total connected load for a digital line often runs about 1.5 to 2 times the press's nameplate once support systems are counted. So that's something to look into. Another supporting document here is the specs that you signed up, whether you knew it or not when you bought these machines. So, typical digital presses site requirements, just depending on which uh, machine you have, is 73 to 81 degrees, and they have to hold a relative humidity between 40 and 60% continuously, just for them to work at optimal levels. So, other digital platforms, they have, similar ones, but on the whole, that's about where we are with all of them. 73 to 81 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 to 60% in the humidity. Well, the reason why it matters is if there's a drop, like if you're not conditioning the room, because we're not conditioning the room for people anymore. We're now we're conditioning the room to be a safe parameter for these machines. And the reason why it matters so much is because we have to have a paradigm shift in how we're running our HVAC systems and how we're running our equipment, not just during business hours, but 24 hours a day. So as we move on here, and I'm kind of setting up the stage for part three, I have two sides. Well, what runs at night and then peaks in with the heat. So 32%, the U.S. Energy Information Administration from the U.S., that's the EIA, they did a commercial building and energy consumption survey. And this survey took place, I believe it was in 2018. And when we pulled the data from that, they did a survey of all commercial buildings nationwide on what their actual energy use is for each building. And it says that the cooling and ventilation alone are about one third. I know on the screen it says 32%, but let's just say it's about one third of the commercial buildings electrical pool nationally. Now that works nationally. Here we are, we're talking about press rooms, we're talking about printing companies like yourself. That's gonna probably be higher because the machine and the equipment are combating you, especially if you're talking in the summer months like July and August. Your share is gonna likely be higher than 32%. It's gonna be probably closer to about 40 or even 50%. So your hottest July afternoon, for example, is a maximum AC, and then the HVACs are pulling at 100%. Not only that, but you're pulling a maximum production line all at the same moment, all in the same time. That one single afternoon will set you up for a higher utility bill for the entire year. And let me explain to you why that is. We're going into the power cycle, and as we're talking about the power cycle, we're going to talk about what can sleep and what can't sleep. So I have two sides on this slide. On the left side, we have the cycle down nights and weekends. Here's what you probably can put to sleep in your printing room. You can presses can go to sleep standby modes. Always look at the OEM guidance and the manufacturer recommendations on what you can and can't do. There's laminators, binders, cutters, those type of finishing equipments. Those don't necessarily have to be on over the weekends if you're building or during off hours. Air compressors, something you should always look at, and I talked about it earlier, is fixing the leaks first. But once those are fixed, that's something you can kind of cycle down on the weekends. Non-production HVAC and lighting zones. Some of those things seem minimal, but when you aggregate it over an entire month or a year, they add up. And then, of course, dryers, corona treaters between jobs. Here's something that you probably can't turn off. And on the right side, I have keep running, cooling costs more. So when you leave alone, like the press room humidity control, as we covered, the press subsystems and manufacturers intentionally keeps them warm because there's liquid toner presses like Indigos that keep the imaging systems contained. And that's fighting against you more when you restart and you do those warm-up modes more than anything else. And it combats you more than when you just turn off the system. So keeping them on all the time is usually optimal. And anything along the way that's super power hungry, even paper storage, those things have to be running on all the time. So 15 minutes in the back of your mind, just think of 15 minutes. Why does 15 minutes matter so much? So on this next side of this power cycle, we're going to talk about the importance of 15 minutes for the entire year. There's a thing called a demand charge. So your electric bill has two meters or two components inside of it. The first meter within your electric meter is something that measures usage or kilowatt hours. These are on your bill, you'll see them as like kWh. So that's the total volume you used over the month. Everyone understands that for the most part. It's almost like that's how much gas is used to go so many miles in a car. That's what kilowatt hours, that's how much light and energy you use throughout the month. But there's a second component inside of every one of those meters, and it's called kilowatts or kW, often referred to as demand or demand management. It's not the same as volume or usage. It's about intensity. So the utility or utility vendors, they're going to look at every window for 15 minutes to draw your average during the month. So the bills that you see dollars per kWA or kW charge on your utility bill goes off of that 15-minute window, which is the highest load or highest intensity that your production pooled during that month. It doesn't matter if you hit a high peak or a high little spike at 2 p.m. on a random Tuesday, and it never happened again for another year. That 1 month, that one 15-minute period where there was a spike, your utility vendor is most likely going to for sure charge you for that 1 month and potentially for an entire year. Um, for commercial and industrial customers, a demand routinely runs about almost 30 to 70% of the utility bill. And it's not so much the kWh usage, it's the demand that pushes that bill higher. And most printers that we talk to, they really haven't had anyone do a demand management study before. Now, part of that really matters, especially for us as or for you as the audience, because of ratchet clauses and many tariffs say that your bill demand each month is greater than your actual peak, or for some percentage, and often 60 to 80% of your highest peak for the last 11 to 12 months is going to be determined by just a one-time 15-minute period. So it's really important to understand what's causing spikes in the summer months when you're on a high production load. So this next slide that I'm going to share with you, these basically is the anatomy of, I have four things. There's usually more, but I condensed it into four. The anatomy of a printer's electric bill. Okay, so here's an example. You have your shop, it's 45,000 square feet, commercial printer, it's in the Midwest. You updated digital presses in 2024. Now you have your load. This load shows about 110,000 kilowatt hours of energy usage. That's controlled, climate controlled press room and paper storage. Then the other part that's causing your utility bill to go up is not so much what's going on in the shop, but it's the tariff. On the bottom left, I have the tariff. Typically, you're most likely on a general service demand or general service small or medium large commercial rate, give or take 9 cents per kilowatt hour. That's expected, but what's not expected is $16 or sometimes even $20 you're being charged per kW or per demand on your monthly bill. So the question that comes up is, what did the digital conversion actually do to this bill? Where did the money go year over year? And if you look at this chart, it's pretty comprehensive. And the blue is the kWh. That's the usage or the gas that goes into the car to make the car go farther. The blue is the kWh or the usage for how much energy is actually being used in your facility. But what's always higher, especially in printing presses and manufacturing sites, is the demand. In the gold is the demand, which is always higher. Bill demand is 100 and in this example, this pattern here, 310 kW in January compared to 465 in July. It's almost an increase of about 50%. And the takeaway here is it's about 30 to 70% range that's never really talked about. But the good news is most shops can fix this pretty much without changing anything on their day to day, just with some very practical tips. So let me go to this next slide, and here's a few items with real working clients that we've worked with, what they changed without spending anything on the back end. The first thing you could do to change this, to change your bill, is number one, pre-cool your buildings. And when I mean pre-cool, I mean pre-cool it. Make it cold between 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, or 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. before people get there. And the reason why is it's cheaper to do that. The electricity is usually cheaper depending on the rate you're on. To do that in the early morning. That way you're not combating the sun and high humidity hours, around 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock when that peak time kicks in on the electric grid and they're charging you more. You could easily trim about 35 kW on summer bills. The second thing you could do is it's demand management, staggering your setups and sequencing your load. So we're not saying turn off everything. We're just saying don't turn them all on at the exact same time. So you have your HVAC, you have your presses, your finishers, your dryers, all these different cycles. If you turn everything on at the same time, that's going to pull more energy uh, at one time, causing your demand to spike. If you could eliminate that Monday spike or that early morning spike, and you just stagger those loads a little bit, your utility bill is going to go down naturally. The third thing they can do, and this happens more often than not, is just fix a leak. Look at your air ducts. Walk around when nothing's running. If it's the middle of the night or you go on the weekend when nobody's there, go around, walk around, see if you could hear a hissing sound, see if you could, detect a leak or have a HVAC professional look at it. More than likely, there probably is a leak, especially if it's an older building. One client, they cut 6,000 kilowatt hours a month because of a small leak, and it wasn't even a large hole. The fourth thing that we highly recommend you do is now that you've upgraded your equipment, you're implementing common sense practices, look at your utility bill. Go to your vendor's website, look at the rates, look at the tariffs, and see if there's a better rate that you could be on. Confirm the ratchet exposure, confirm when on-peak and off-peak hours are, and see how do they determine your KW demand and when they're setting that, when those 15-minute intervals operate. All in, 14 to $18,000 a year. That's about what was saved with this one specific client. That's about 10% overall of their utility bills by just doing these one thing. Now, this is just a playbook. It's operational, and all this was done without really spending any capital at all. So you just have to take the time to go ahead and do it. Have the professionals look at it if need be, and cutting your utility bill down is absolutely possible if you do the right steps. Part five of this webinar, and I know I'm running a little bit out of time, is about rates and curtailment. So the pros and cons of curtailment. My understanding from what the GAA has been telling us is a lot of printers are on curtailment rates, whether they know it or whether they did it intentionally or unintentionally. Well, curtailment rates are absolutely worth pursuing because what happens is you could qualify for rebates every month. You can they're free to sign up for. They seem like a really good opportunity, and every month you could get a few $100s off of your utility bill by just participating in a curtailment program. They pay you. They make it sound like a great deal, and some printers, some vendors, they don't call for a curtailment day or a curtailment period for years. But you got to read the fine print on the right side of the screen. If you don't perform in a curtailment period, like if the utility emails you, usually they give you about a good 24 hours. Sometimes they'll give you a good few hours, and they say, we need you to pull back some of your energy because you're in this program, because the electric grid is being overloaded on a hot day. So they need to use your energy to suffice other buildings. And if you don't meet that curtailment, there's a non-performance penalty, and those non-performance penalties are brutal. Every contract with the vendors when you're in a curtailment program is different. But if you commit to a load and you can't shed it during those times, the clawbacks, they far exceed any savings that you earned, even over a year's worth of period. So if you sign up for one of these curtailment programs, be honest about your operations, be honest about what you can and can't turn off in your press rooms because all it takes is one time for them to pull or request a required shedding of your demand load, and it could easily just offset all savings that you had for the entire year. But if you do it right, it's definitely free money. It's found money and it helps you guys out. But if you do it optimistic and you're just, trying to get a quick buck, the penalty machine is just not worth it. So be very careful with curtailment. If you don't know if you're on curtailment, it's worth a call to your utility vendor. It should say it on your utility bill. If you don't know what the limits are or the parameters in the contract that's in with a curtailment agreement with your utility vendor, call the utility vendor. They'll refresh your memory. If you don't want to be a part of it anymore, it's very easy to get out. There's no commitments with those. One of the things when we work with with printing companies and manufacturers nationwide is everyone just assumes that the bill's correct. It's always correct until someone checks it. In fact, it's one of the only bills that gets paid without question because the lights need to be on in order for operations to continue to make money, right? Well, here's six things that we often find, and we're giving this all to you for free so you can look at it. Number one is the wrong rate class. Oftentimes, because your shop has changed, you've added more or you deleted equipment. The utility vendor doesn't know that. They don't know what's in your building. They don't know what type of pool you're requiring for your operations every day. And so that's the biggest way to recover funds is just finding out you're on the wrong rate class because no one's changed it in 20 years or no one's changed it in 2 and 5 years. Another area is multiple meter areas. So demand meters read through, there's multipliers that are inside of every one of the meters. And oftentimes those meters can change based off of electromagnetics that's around in the area or even in the building. And those multipliers change from time to time and they could be wrong. So it's always worth looking at those meters, getting those meters checked, making sure your usage is actually your usage. There's sales tax that could be exempt or partially exempt. As printers, we've seen that several of the language written, now it depends on where you are nationally and the language written as to what qualifies as manufacturing, according to your municipality. But oftentimes, and most of the time, printing and printing presses does qualify or can qualify as a manufacturing production, and it gets you a discount by just removing that sales tax and on every one of your utility bills. So that's worth looking into. There's misapplied riders and ratchets, estimated true reads versus actual reads because the meter reader isn't, communicating, and so they're just guessing your meter usage. So if you're seeing estimated or EST anywhere on your bill, that's a huge red flag. Go look at that, get that investigated. And one of my favorite things is a thing called duplicate or orphan charges. You'd be surprised how many times people are paying for someone else's electricity in a neighboring complex. Meters being removed, or a new shop opening up, and the meters don't get transferred correctly. It happens a lot, so it's always worth double checking some of those things. So here's the last one as we're wrapping up. This is your Monday morning. So I know it's Thursday afternoon. Friday is going to be Friday. We're going to be finishing all of our projects Friday. But over the weekend, I want you to look at these five things, screenshot this, take a picture of it, do this on Monday because I guarantee you're going to find something or some way for you to save money on your utility bills. The first thing I want you to do on Monday is go online and pull a 12-month copy of all of your electric bills for every one of your meters and accounts at your facilities. Find the demand charge line, calculate what your total is, and if you can't find it, we could help you determine that. That'll help you with some of these other steps down here. Finding your peak is the second one. Ask your utility for interval data. And what I mean by interval data is they'll tell you what your demand load is every 15 minutes every day for the last however many years you requested for, but find that interval data because if there's just one bill in July or one 15-minute period in July, like I was talking about the demand reading, and it peaked too much, it's determining what you're being charged for demand for the rest of the year, even though you're not using what that one peak was. So request interval data, find that peak, determine what happened during that one 15-minute period if you can, see if you could avoid it and move forward that way. That way you're not being penalized for just a one-time 15-minute error that took place, a year ago. Third thing I want you to do, contract the manufacturer of your machine. Whatever printers you have, digital, whatever printer or whatever machines you have, contact them and get the official word on when they can go to sleep, when they can be on standby, when it's safe to cycle, what they really need to be safely conditioned. Because what's written usually inside of the owner's manuals or what's written online, it's usually different based off of where you're at per state. It's different for a printer company in a very humid area versus someone in Arizona where it's very dry. Call them, get the word on that because some of those things really matter. The fourth thing I want you to do is walk the floor. Walk your floors when it's quiet and just listen. Just stand there and listen for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and see if you can hear any leaks in the air duct system. It's worth the check because more often than not, there is a leak somewhere and it needs to be fixed. And the fifth thing I would request that you do to save money on your utility bills is to do a rate review. If your load profile's changed anytime in the last year to 2 years or even longer, when your rate schedule was set or when you turned on your electricity, there's probably a different rate that you could be on. Now, every utility, they do have the best interests of their clients in hand, but you as an end user, it's ultimately up to you to determine which rate is best for your business. It's not up to the utility provider. So do rate comparisons, see what would work for you if you're on the wrong schedule, if there's an alternate rider that you could be on. You could do it yourself. You could have a utility bill auditing company do that for yourself. And really, that brings me to my last slide as I conclude. Uh, we offer, we'll read the bills for you. And GAA has an amazing agreement with us for all of the members. We'll look at your gas, your electric, your water, your telecom, your merchant, and we do it all for free and a very discounted contingency rate. We don't recover anything. There's nothing owed to you. All we ask is that we just simply share in anything that we do save. It's definitely worth a double look, especially if you've had someone do it recently, but not in the last year or 2 years. So, Nika, I'm going to pass it back over to you. I know I'm at 35. I'm not sure if there's time to do questions and answers, but I'm sure everyone's tired of hearing me speak. So I'll go ahead and pass that out over to you.
No, thank you so much, Jeremiah. This has been really informative. And we're really glad to have you here. Actually, I learned so much here, and hopefully all of you did too. So I do want to open it up for a couple of minutes to see if we do have any questions. There's a lot, of course, that goes into understanding your rate plans and the different charges and how your manufacturing facility is set up. But I think now would be a great opportunity to at least get a sense from Jeremiah with your situation, ways that you can approach assessing your utility charges and how that might be how you might be potentially overpaying, which is what we're trying to help you help you prevent and assess. So just go ahead and unmute if you do have any questions. And what I'm going to do in the meantime is I'm actually very curious. So is it really common to have billing errors? I mean, do you see this a lot with your customers?
Yeah, we do. I would say typically over the past 37 years since we've been doing this, we find something about 90% of the time.
Oh wow, that's pretty significant. And it seems like, within the printing industry, I'm seeing a lot with the digital side of things that's really changing the landscape, it seems, with electricity usage. And some people might even be on gas. for their electricity versus, or their gas for the heating and using electricity for the cooling. So of course that's all factoring in as well, especially, what if you're in a really cold climate? How does that impact this conversation for really cold climates? And, are we looking at kind of a similar conversation here with the heating and cooling?
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, regardless if it's really cold or really hot outside, you still have to have those rooms in specific parameters for uh, the room temperature and the humidifier in there.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, yeah, it could be gas, and the concept is still the same. There's still a gas meter. There are still ducts, to see if there's a leak. If it's
Mm-hmm.
propane, that's obviously something we can look at too. But also, more than just electricity, when it's hot, there's water too. Water, sewer,
Mm-hmm.
water loss ratios with cooling towers, depending on the building and depending on how, the building's structured for HVAC. So water and sewer is always worth looking at too when it comes to cooling towers for the environmental, controls.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So then I'm curious, do you think it's worth it to switch? I mean, if someone just goes to their utility provider and says, okay, well, we're in just a standard rate class and we want to be in a different rate class that's more, what's the benefit? Like, should everyone switch, or are there things that they should be asking for utility?
I think there's things you need to ask. I would never blindly recommend you just switch a rate just because you feel like that's what you need to be on. You'll need to do a rate comparison. So with every vendor, they'll have rate schedules or tariffs that are set by the PUC, the
Hmm.
Public Utility Commission, and they basically outline what every rate structure costs per kilowatt hour and per kW demand. And I would do a full on like a whole year's rate comparison side by side and seeing what you would have paid versus what you are paying. If
Hmm.
those rates make sense, then I would recommend going for those switches. But, making sure you're doing it with accuracy is also very important because there's one little component or one small mess up could potentially cost you more, and you don't want to do that.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. So I'm going to put it back over to the members to see if there are any other last questions before we wrap up for the day. And I'll give you a second to see if anyone has any last questions for Jeremiah here from Utility Audit. Okay, well, again, Jeremiah mentioned that we have an excellent program with Utility Audit for Graphic Arts Alliance members. I really encourage you, if you have not gone through any sort of process like this, I really do encourage you to reach out to Jeremiah and the folks over there at Utility Audit. This is a GAA preferred partner, and they've been really wonderful to work with. So please do reach out to them. I think this could be a good exercise for your company and just assessing if there's some savings to be had. So Jeremiah and Mike, thank you both for joining us today. I hope you all have a wonderful day.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you guys.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.